All right, guys, how are you doing today? Hopefully you're doing well. You'll need your packet of notes out if you haven't already gotten them, so please get those out. This is going to be a little bit longer video because I've got to talk about kind of our schedule for the week since we've had some weather issues, and cover 2 days of notes. Yesterday, Tuesday, we were supposed to cover day 1 and had a cute little game for you to play and all of that stuff, but instead I'm going to post that game on my blog. And you can play it on your own time. Pretty much day 1 covered just the history of people that contributed to the evolutionary theory and people that contributed to Darwin's development of natural selection. So it's a card sort. You've probably played one before. You put all the names on one column, and then you put kind of a, I think the second column is what type of scientists they were, so geologist, paleontologist. Something that contributed to their knowledge, and then their last one is the theory that they developed. So you'll have 4 columns, and I believe there's 7 guys that contributed. So you can play that on your own time. I'm not really going to talk about day 1 because you can read. As far as our schedule is concerned for this week, obviously I'm at Hudson Alpha with the 13 of you that decided to come with me. Those few will get to watch this at home tonight. You're getting to watch it in class. You do have a homework assignment tonight to watch at least 1 video from Bozeman, because you will have activities tomorrow to prove to me that you've done it. But I will give you a list of others to watch. On Thursday, you will have a synthesis question. It's based on day 2's information, so what we cover today. We will practice with our Hardy-Weinberg equations. That's why I need you to do the homework tonight of watching that video. And then you will have to watch day 6 and day 7 online Thursday night to prepare for Friday. Friday we will have a lecture in class. You'll have your first Hardy-Weinberg mini quiz, and we'll start on our first set of actual points for an assignment on Friday. And then you'll have to watch 1 more lecture over the weekend. So we're really going to cram it in, but I think with the schedule I've created for the last 2 weeks, we're going to have 2 full days of just open review where we can talk about any math equation, we can talk about any topic that we've covered and things like that. We can play some Jeopardy and go back and review. So please start compiling all of your notes and getting those ready so that we have them next Thursday and Friday, and try and be here as often as possible for the next 2 weeks. Luckily, most of the stuff's online, so you're good. All right, so let's get started. Find an open spot in your notes. I'm going to go ahead and flash those videos I want you to watch. Here are the videos I need you to watch. Hopefully you can see that. If not, I'll send these to school with Mr. Hall and he can show them to you. So the first 4 are on your own time. They will help you at any point during this unit, but this list is just going to keep getting longer. So definitely these first 4. From Bozeman, it's natural selection. The second one is examples of natural selection, then evidence for evolution, and Unit 1 review, natural selection. Your homework for tonight, the 1 video that you absolutely have to watch no matter what, is solving Hardy-Weinberg problems. Mr. Anderson's going to walk you through how to solve them and how to work through them, and we are actually going to do it tomorrow. You'll have a quiz on Friday. It's a mini quiz. You'll have another mini quiz on Monday, I believe, and then your big Hardy-Weinberg quiz will be Tuesday. So please, please, please make sure that you're preparing for these, because the 2 little ones are only 15 points. The big one is a doozy, so make sure you figure out your problems before then. All right, then just as backup, there's a couple from Crash Course you might want to watch. First one being called Natural Selection. I bet you're wondering what we're talking about today. And the second one being called Evolution, It's a Thing. He talks about some of the evidence that goes with evolution. All right, are we good? And of course, you can always YouTube yourself and find more to watch. There's obviously more Hardy-Weinberg problems. I know that Khan Academy does a good one on Hardy-Weinberg as well, but I really like Mr. Anderson the way he teaches. All right, so day 2, this is evolution and Darwin's theory of natural selection. You should know a little bit about this already, being that you covered it in 9th grade, but depending on who you had and how they taught it, you may not remember a thing. So let's get started. I think I'm supposed to hit the space bar. Yes, okay. So we've got to realize that Darwin started to study being a doctor, then he decided he didn't want to be a doctor, and he decided to be a naturalist. Obviously, a naturalist is going to study nature. He went to a private school, being that it was a religious school. Lots of people don't think he had any tie to religion, but that was actually a big interior problem that he had with his development of natural selection, is how it contradicted some of the things, or seemed to contradict some of the things that he learned and had been based in religion. But he was a naturalist and a priest at the same time, so he really was a religious man, and he struggled with that internal conflict that he had. He took a voyage on the HMS Beagle. He took a job to be the doctor and the naturalist on the boat. And back then, everybody had to have a naturalist in case they discovered a new species, so it was kind of a cool job to have. As he went, he collected all types of plants and animals and fossils that he dug up on all the different islands that they visited. They went around the entire world in 5 years. His voyage and the path that he took kind of went down the bottom of Chile and Argentina and South America, and then back up the other side and around towards California. So you can see he covered a lot of ground, and they came across and back to England where they started. He took 2 different books with him on his voyage, the first being Principles of Geology by John Lyell, and he's in our day 1 notes, so you should know him by now if you haven't read those already. That's one of his, probably on one of his cards, if I remember correctly. And then he also took the book Principles of Populations by Thomas Mathis. That was kind of an odd contribution to his theory, but it makes a lot of sense because it talks about humans and how human populations work, and lots of people didn't tie those to the way animals worked. So it was kind of a cool way for him to interpret that and pull it into his knowledge base. All right, the book written by Darwin was called On the Origin of Species. The main phrase that he used was called descent with modification. I don't know if I talked about that. Yeah. Descent with modification is what he used instead of the word evolution and instead of the word natural selection. He did choose the word natural selection, but just not as often as he used descent with modification. Evolution is actually only used in the book once, and it's the very last word in the book, which is kind of odd that people attach that so much to Darwin. Darwin didn't actually invent evolution. He just kind of started this idea path, and people kind of latched on and started kind of building and developing around him. There was another evolutionist named Lamarck that, if you've read Day 1 notes, you've heard a little bit about, but Lamarck was wrong. Lamarck didn't really have a good understanding. Well, he had a good understanding. He was a scientist and everything, but he didn't have a great understanding. He made some mistakes, and so you can see when you read about him and look at him why he had a problem, and why his ideas didn't really stick like Charles Darwin's did. The idea of descent with modification is that over time, as descendants are developed, as heredity is passed on to new generations, that there are certain modifications that are made. Because it's such a long transition, and because there are so many different forces acting on individuals in a population, that somebody, just by sheer circumstance, is going to be better at surviving than someone else. And so as time goes on, those individuals that are better at surviving are going to get that modification, and that descendant is going to inherit that modification as we go, and be able to reproduce. And oftentimes it... Can you hear the squeaky toy? Oftentimes, if you're better able to survive, you are also in a better place to reproduce. Therefore, you can see how the inheritance would be passed on. Now, natural selection is based very much on this descent with modification. That's where he started, Shrewsbury, right there in the middle with the arrow. Oh, look, I forgot this was on here. Good. You can see down around South America, the Galapagos Islands. Obviously, you can't see where I'm pointing, but the Galapagos Islands is where he got a lot of his research done, and a lot of his different species that he found there. Lots of turtles and finches and things like that. Those are the most famous. There's the boat he was on, the book he wrote. Descent with modification, meaning that as species go on, and you can see the time down the y-axis over here, 34 million years ago, you had these animals that I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that started to develop certain traits, and as those traits started to produce more and more successful lives and a better and easier way of living, they got passed on. Those that did not inherit those traits and didn't carry those traits, they did not get passed on. So you can see that over time, as we get to 0 million years ago with our African elephant and our Asian elephant, we have these animals that have developed specific traits and gotten more and more specialized with the things that help them be successful. Now, with natural selection, you're always going to have certain traits that are considered weak and certain traits that are considered dominant. So, or not dominant, but strong, weak and strong, excuse me, weak or beneficial. So let's have a Dora moment. If you've ever seen Dora, that Dora stares at the TV and waits for you to answer. So who in natural selection is doing the picking? Who do you think it is? Okay, hopefully someone has yelled out, nature. Let's hope that someone said that. Yes, nature is going to be the one that's choosing here. So it's not anything that the actual individual can do because it's totally uncontrollable. It's whatever traits by random assortment during meiosis that you inherit from your parents. If you happen to get one of those traits, or the only other way would be what? Dora moment. Right, by random mutation. Maybe your parents didn't have it, but maybe you're the first one to get it. And that random mutation caused some type of new successful beneficial trait in you. That is the only way. Nature may have just deemed you the golden child to get some kind of crazy trait that made you way more successful or way more attractive to the other gender so that you can reproduce better. Now, populations are the only things that evolve. An individual cannot evolve. So you've got to think about it this way. Which cells are going to be the ones that have to carry that difference or that possible mutation or that beneficial trait? Hopefully you said your egg or sperm, your gamete cells, your sex cells. If you don't have it in a sex cell, it doesn't count. So you can't change something just about your natural appearance in your somatic cells and expect that to go on to your young. It's got to be something within the population that's carried and passed on through meiosis. So not just one person, but two people have to come together. So it's not a single individual that's going to evolve. It's going to be a population. Now, Malthus, the guy that we talked about earlier that wrote the book Principles of Population, he was an economist. He wasn't an actual scientist. He talked about how nature decides who gets to survive and reproduce and who doesn't, and that man is not the one that gets to choose, although most of you would like to choose who you mate with. But it's those forces, those external environmental forces that are going to determine who is more beneficial or who is more successful and who is not. And he put it in terms of humans, which is kind of funny to think about, but it's true. And Darwin kind of translated it to how it happens in the animal population. All right, now, there is a time when man does get to choose, and we call this artificial selection. Artificial meaning man-made. Man can select for what traits he wants present. You see a fluffy kitty, and a fluffy kitty is way more cuddly than a kitty that's not very fluffy, that has short hair. So we've bred certain traits into our domestic animals, whether it be for attractiveness or the cuddle factor, which I would choose for, or maybe it's for their working abilities, what they can do on a farm to actually help you out. We've also seen this in plants, what plants yield the most fruit, or plants that maybe come to harvest earlier and things like that. We can pick for those certain things. So if you've heard of Mr. Hutton yet, hopefully you've read Day 1 notes. If you haven't, you really need to. Mr. Hutton talked about a theory called gradualism, where everything that took place thousands of years ago is still being acted on today, and it takes a long time for all of these things on Earth to be created, whether he's talking about different species or different land marks, like mountains and things like that. We can essentially erase all of that very, very quickly just by artificial selection. We can choose the traits we want and say, screw you, nature, I don't care what you think, and pick for traits that maybe aren't the most beneficial. We've seen this very obviously in medicine. First of all, the insecticides that we've used have created insecticide-resistant bugs in our farm industry. We call these super bugs, and bugs that we can't kill and that farmers have a really hard time with. We've also seen this with HIV and AIDS. We've kind of built in a resistance to our traditional medicines for HIV and AIDS. And then most dear and near to my heart, MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. That is a very, very famous staph bacteria. It is horrible, to say the least. Usually it just eats in a hole through you as it grows, and you have to pack it with gauze and change it out, and it gets really nasty, and it's really hard to kill because it's resistant to some of the most potent antibiotics. So bad deal. We can really jack things up when we want to. Now, if you flip your page over, there are certain evidences for common ancestry. So we can see in food and in animals. Maybe you want a really furry sheep. But we also have different evidences for evolution. And specifically for common ancestry, that's one of the main things that that Darwin used to support his idea of natural selection. So you can see these arms in front of you, and you can see how the dark yellow coated bone is present in each individual. Now, it may not be present in the same size and shape. You can see the human and the cat is probably the closest. Next would be the bat and then the whale. But you can see that they are all present, that each of the individuals has that yellow coated bone, also has the rays or the 5 phalanges or appendages at the end of this arm. Each of them having an upper arm is kind of an important factor as well. So these are called homologous structures. Homologous, homo meaning same. So structures that have similar, appendages that have similar structures and similar functions. It can't just be one or the other. It has to be both. All of these are used as an upper appendage. They're used to move your body through space. Obviously some swim, some fly, some walk, but they are all very, very functionally similar. Now, we also have organs that are called vestigial, and vestigial organs are those organs that we've kind of lost a need for. Can you think of any organs in your body that maybe we don't use anymore? Please don't say kidneys. Yes, you can live without a kidney, but that's not quite the same thing. Okay, hopefully you said appendix. The appendix, they used to think that when we were meat eaters back in our scavenger days, our hunting and gathering days, that it released some type of enzyme that helped us break down meat better, but now that most of our diets are full of carbs and sugar, we don't need that as much, and so it's lost its use. So that's kind of a vestigial organ. Some people say your tonsils, but I think they serve a purpose younger in life. Maybe you can live without them, but it's not the same thing. Lots of people want to say your spleen, but your spleen does a job. We don't take it out unless we have to. Yes, you can live without it, but that's not quite the same thing. Now, embryological homologies is also a huge supporting evidence, because if you look at the top row, all of these individuals are almost identical in their embryological development, even down to a fish. If you know anything about the totem pole of animals and who's the top and who's the bottom, bony fish are at the bottom, then you have amphibians, and then reptiles, and then birds are actually closest to us, and then mammals. So you can see the top 4 on the far right are all mammals. Then you have a bird, a reptile, an amphibian, and a fish. All of these individuals look the same in their embryological development. Now, the second row down, we start to see some differences, but it's kind of baffling to see what the final product is with a fish and a human, and to see how similar we all started out. You also see molecular homologies. That's when we break it down to the actual amino acids and the actual nucleotides in our DNA. We can see how similar we actually are. With a monkey, we have 8 amino acids that differ in our hemoglobin chain. With a mouse, which is also a mammal, 27 differences. And then as you go down the totem pole of animals, you can see with a bird, the chicken, we have 45, and with an amphibian, we skipped reptiles in this one, we have 67. We go all the way down to jawless fish, which is the lowest level of fish that we can see. They're agnathes. We have 125 that are different out of 146. So having 8 difference out of 146 is a pretty big deal. Now, the next one is biogeography. This is where a species is in basically where they live and where they're from. Endemic species are species that are naturally only found in one place on the planet, and it's usually on an island. They're a little bit more at risk for some problems because they're only found in one place, and we don't know if they can fill a niche anywhere else, or niche, however you want to say it. Now, we can talk about convergent evolution here. Convergent, if you converge on something, that means it's coming together. This is a term used for certain animals that appear to be visually related, but they're not actually that related. They have similar environments and are under similar pressures, but they really are very, very distant from each other. We normally find this to be true, this convergent evolution, when they have what's called an analogous structure. An analogous structure is something that has the same function, but it doesn't necessarily come from the same base. It may have the same structure, but it doesn't necessarily serve the same function. You see this very, very clearly with, and I don't think it should, yeah, it does, okay, a bird wing and an insect wing. You can say, oh, they must be related because they have wings. Not really the case, because a bird wing's structure is completely different than how an insect's wing is structured. And so you can say they're not really that closely related once you bring in the molecular homologies and embryological homologies. A bug does not develop the same as a bird, and when you look at their DNA, it's completely different. This is not one of those things that's going to support evolution because it doesn't really show any type of common ancestry. Now, we do have a final piece of evidence, and that's the fossil evidence. Lots of the fossil evidence is missing, though. It's very incomplete. Lots of people criticize the way fossil evidence is put together, but they don't realize how hard it is to get fossils to be made. It's a very tough, specific process, and if you've read Day 1, you'll know all about strata layers and being on the bottom of the ocean and all the pressure that's provided and things like that by the water. But you'll also realize that lots of them could still be undiscovered because of where they're found. So, yes, it is a valid point, but it is often criticized because it's so lacking in its timeline and its completion. This is just showing you that over time we found whale fossils that actually have a hind appendage, and they've linked the DNA records from whales with cows, which is kind of funny. Because you call someone a fat cow and you call them, hey, you're a huge whale. It's kind of funny that we've made that connection, but we didn't realize how close we actually were. But yes, they think that cows were once distant relatives of whales, and that whales actually were land animals at one point. And it kind of makes sense because whales are mammals, which is kind of odd to have in the ocean, but it happens every once in a while. All right, so obviously we've talked about fossil formation. This is the exact same slide from Day 1, so you can go through that yourself. All right, Part 2, microevolution Part 1. This is Day 3. Day 3 talks about microevolution, how populations evolve, not individuals. We've talked a little bit about that, how DNA is not a choice. It's handed down to you, so you don't get to pick. You are what you are because of the DNA that's found in your cells, and you didn't get to sign up anywhere. Like, I didn't sign up anywhere that said, yep, I think I want to be a blonde, and I'd like curly hair, please, and please make me tall. That didn't happen. I was stuck with what I was stuck with. Luckily, I got to be tall, blonde, and curly haired, and I kind of like it. So individuals will either suffer or benefit from the result of the DNAs they get. Now, I have suffered a little. I mean, I know I have blonde curly hair and I'm tall and I love it, but I also have almost zero pigment, so that has been a negative as far as my DNA is concerned. That's a trait that I've inherited that has not made me extra successful at surviving. It actually makes me stay inside and not meet people. So when I go on vacation, I have to be really careful to not go outside between like 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. I'm just kind of stuck inside like a hermit crab. So there are certain traits that are favorable, and there are certain traits that are detrimental, and your environment and the forces that play in your environment are what decide which ones are which. Now, population genetics, this is a big one. This is where we start studying trait variations. Over time within a population, we can look at how many times a specific allele shows up in a population. We call that allele frequency. That has a lot to do with Hardy-Weinberg and where we're going here. These are some of my favorite animals. This is a real animal. It's called a blue-footed booby. Yes, they have blue feet. Why the heck would nature choose for blue feet? Nobody knows, but it's somewhat beneficial for them. It may be some type of hidden reproductive trait that the women look for. It's kind of unknown, but it's a really cool thing that they have blue feet. You don't see blue animals very often, except for like maybe frogs. So a species is defined as an organism that is genetically similar enough that it can reproduce with each other, and they can produce viable offspring. Viable meaning living offspring that are going to survive, and offspring that can then in turn be fertile themselves and produce more offspring. We often think of a horse and a donkey mating, producing a mule. A mule is not viable offspring. It is alive, but it is not fertile. So they don't count as the same species. Yes, they can produce a hybrid, but they're not. Because a mule is not fertile, you can't take two mules and let them have a magical night and have a mule baby. Because they can't do that, you can't consider them the same species. Now, geographic range, let's see, versus population. A range simply refers to everywhere that species may be. So because these are all the same species, all of these salamanders here, we can consider their range most of California. Now, what do you think runs right down the middle here? If you said mountains, you were right. Yes, there are mountains that run down here. So you can see that there are different environmental forces playing on this side of the mountain range as there are on this side. If you remember from ecology, what type of biome are we going to see on this side of the mountain? Hopefully you said desert. And what causes that? The shadow effect. Very good. You guys are so smart. Dora would be so proud. So range simply means where we're found. Now for humans, our population, you can't really say that it's out of reach for someone in the United States to be reproducing with someone in China because we're so global and our world has become very small by means of technology. So technically humans' range is global. Certain bird species may be global because they can get across the waters, but for other individuals, there's going to be a certain place that they're present. Gene pools may or may not interact. You may have a gene pool here. You may not have this gene pool down here of this brown speckled one that mixes with this other brown one that doesn't have speckles because, excuse me, I'm just burping up dinner. I made a fabulous dinner though. Ask Mr. Hall. These two individuals are so far away and being such small species, they're not going to be able to make this trek. Plus, this one is down towards LA, which is very, very warm, and this one's up in the Northern California areas where it's pretty cold, so you may not have a niche that this one can fill that's going to be successful up there. So gene pools may or may not interact. Obviously, these two guys might run into each other sometime in the future. These two may make googly eyes across the pasture to each other, but as far as being out of reach, these two are pretty much it. Allele frequency means how many are present at that time within a population. You'll see allele frequency referred to a lot when we get to Hardy-Weinberg. Now, if the frequency is fixed, if there's no changing in how many alleles are present, we consider no evolution going on. Zero evolution might be happening, so no changes are happening within the population. If the frequency is going up or down, then we consider evolution occurring at that time. So you may see this, you may not. It's just kind of whether the other forces in the environment are allowing for changes to occur or not. Now, Hardy-Weinberg. Obviously humans are everywhere. Hardy-Weinberg, this is the beginning equation. P plus Q equals 1. That means that of the percentage of the population that is the dominant allele, that would be P, that is going to be a certain percentage of the population. The recessive allele, Q, will be the other portion of the population, and obviously to represent all of the population, you would have to have 100% or a 1. So this would be a decimal, this would be a decimal, it may be 0.5, 0.5, it may be 0.3, 0.7. It depends on what's going on in your population. The second equation looks a little crazier. Okay, P squared is going to equal your homozygous dominant. If we were dealing with tall plants are dominant to recessive plants, what would the genotype of the homozygous dominant person be? Hopefully you said big T, big T. 2PQ is going to be the heterozygous individual, so if tall is dominant to short, what would theirs be? Big T, little t, good. And if the Q squared individual is going to be the homozygous recessive individual and tall is dominant to short, what would their genotype be? Hopefully you said little t, little t. So you can see if they tell you which individuals, first they'll have to tell you if it's a dominant or recessive trait, then they can tell you who's who within the population. You can apply this equation pretty much anytime you want. So your allele frequencies down here, you can see that 0.8 and 0.2 would equal 1, and then you can apply them to the equation however you need it and figure out how much of the population or what the frequency of the population is homozygous recessive, or heterozygous, and homozygous dominant. And Mr. Anderson is going to take you all through that, and I'm going to go through it tomorrow as well. Now, I don't like this slide because I would like to think of populations that are evolving. So what I want you to do is take your hand and put it on your piece of paper. It can be on any of these notes pages. I think the second page of day 3 has a lot of space on it. See right there? Put it right there. So put your hand and trace your hand. Okay, this is the last thing we're going to do. All right, so trace your hand and write 5 conditions for evolution. Okay, this is evolution will occur if these 5 things happen. In your notes it says 5 things must be met for equilibrium, but that doesn't fit our fingers, so I'm not going to be able to do that. So in order to keep the finger analogy, I need you to go with me here. So these are the things that need to be present for evolution to occur. All right, so the first thing, and I'm going to get off of that. The first thing you have to do is you have to have, what's significant about this finger? It's really tiny. Okay, so you have to have a small sample size if you want evolution to occur. If you have a very large population, not happening. If you have a large population, what you're going to be able to do is you're going to dilute all of the changes that could be happening, all of those possible mutations and all of those non-random occurrences. So you want a very small population if you want evolution to happen. Now, what is significant about this finger? You can see that giant rock on there, right? Okay, so this has to do with mating. You've got to have non-random mating. If you have random mating, meaning that there's some type of preference, no preference being shown, you don't have evolution occurring. You've got to show that there is a preference. So for me, my preference was for humor and handsomeness, and so that's why I chose non-random mating, because I chose according to certain traits that I picked over others. This middle one is actually for mutations. You would think that this was for something else, but this stands for mutations. Not everybody has this long of a middle finger. Some of you have fingers that are shorter and don't stick out as far, but most of you will have a longer finger, and that's a mutation that occurred over time. So you have to have mutations occurring. If mutations are not occurring, then you don't have these random changes and you're at equilibrium and you don't have evolution occurring. So you need mutations present within the population. This next one is your pointer finger, right? When you're going to point at something, you use this finger. So this finger is standing for natural selection. Natural selection must be occurring in the population for evolution to occur. The reason being is we don't want equality. We want there to be a reason that someone is being chosen over another in order for evolution to happen, in order for there to be allele frequencies changing. And then this last one, when do you go like this? Right, when you're hitchhiking. So this stands for migration. There needs to be individuals moving in or moving out of the population. That's immigration and emigration, E and I. The reason we want this is because we want some type of outside factor that's going to start helping us choose. Maybe a really cute guy shows up that's never been there before, like the new guy at school, and all the little animals want to mate with him instead. So let's go through them one more time. In order for evolution to occur, we must have, let's do this Dora style. What's this finger stand for? Small sample size. Very good. My husband's going to tell me if you're answering or not, so you better be answering. And what is this finger for? Good. Non-random mating. You want to choose based on certain traits. Some of you may choose for muscles, Meg. Some of you may choose for brains, and some of you may choose for humor, like I did. Not to say that DC isn't just intelligent, but he's also very attractive and funny. What's this one stand for? Right, mutations. You've got to have mutations present. You've got to have those random occurrences. And what's this one? Good, natural selection. You're going to select for certain traits, whatever those may be. Not you, but nature will. And then the last one, very good, migration or immigration. People moving in and moving out. All right, so hopefully that helped you a little bit with natural selection. Remember these 5, they're big. Remember to watch your homework video. Oh, that's upside down. down. I knew I was going to do that. Solving Hardy-Weinberg problems. Take some notes during this. It'll really help you out tomorrow. All right. Have a fabulous day.